Okay, and thank you for coming on time. We are about 3 minutes in. This is our continuing professional development and workplace learning section. Thank you for joining us. And this event is being recorded, and we will be posting the recording on our YouTube channel shortly after the event, so that more people who are interested to join our section will be able to find out more. Now I'm going to hand the time over to Alan, who will give introduction, right? Because Iruke is not here.
That's right. Thanks very much, Edward. Yeah, normally we'd have Ulrika here to lead us off, but in her absence, I'll lead us off. It's really lovely to see so many of you here. As Edward has already said, this is an open access event, so you'll have a number of members of CPDWL here talking to you, and we might do it's nice to see everybody putting their details in the chat. But just as an extra piece of information, Edward is our information coordinator. Almut is our secretary. Ulrika is our chair, and I co-chair where she needs me to, like now. And I look after the newsletter as well. So thank you all very much for coming. I think not yet, but we're going to go into breakout groups later. Edward, is that correct? We are. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. So
I'm going to put the agenda. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So, and at that point, we'll all be able to have some more detailed chats and share where we come from, what we do with IFLA, and all those different things, just to make it even more personalized. It's difficult with so many of us, but what we're going to do is we're going to give you some feedback on some of the work we've been doing, talk a little bit about where we might be going, some of the things that are we've been asked to help with or are going to be helped with at WLIC later this year. So we'll do those things first. I'm going to do first a quick update on the guidelines for continuing professional development. Last year, I was on a working group with Jill and others, that some of us that are on the call here, and we did some work looking across the globe at guidelines for the impact that the internet has had on our guidelines. The work we did, we looked at our guidelines. Nothing wrong with the guidelines; they still work fine. However, they needed to have some reflection in with the changes we'd all experienced after the pandemic or during the pandemic. So we put together, we did some work to put together some additional guidelines to help with that, and we presented a poster last year. We're in the process of writing that whole exercise up. Hopefully you'll see something in the newsletter. I hope in the next one. If not, it'll be the one for June. But we'll be feeding back on that. The thing that we're particularly looking for is we are looking for help with translations of the guidelines on the poster. We've had a number of people come forward, but again, we'll be making another call for people to be able to help with that if they can. So that's the update on the guidelines. Almut, you're going to talk about coaching in a moment, yes? Yeah. Edward, was there anything you wanted to say as far as the information coordination goes at this point?
No, I would just encourage everyone to use the chat. If you have any questions, any comments, I've been dropping links in the chat, so you can feel free to share as well. We will try to move this along quickly so we have more time for one-to-one interaction. Yeah.
Thank you, Edward. That's really helpful. So I think we'll, if it's all right with you, Alma, do you want to talk about the coaching now?
Yeah, if that's fine for you.
Perfect.
So, okay. Yeah, as maybe some of you know, we have started coaching initiative in 2018. It started only organized by CPDWL, but in 2019, we started collaborating with the management and marketing section. Before 2018, when we had the first drop-in session at the IFLA Congress, we actually did some coaching or offered coaching as part of the CPDWL satellite meetings. Yeah, first drop-in session 2018 in Kuala Lumpur, then next one at the Congress in Athens. Then, as probably people know, in 2020, the Congress was cancelled, so we had online coaching offered. We did the same in 2021, because then we had only the virtual Congress. And in 2022, so last year, we could offer a drop-in physical coaching session in Dublin again, and we also offered online coaching. Yeah, I have a slide about the working group. I don't need to talk about that at the moment. As I said, we're collaborating with management and marketing. So we have some people from CPDWL, and Ulrike is the convener, and someone from M&M. Other activities the group has been done, that is, we have had webinars, podcasts, next slide. And we also had, because we have Vera Kion with us as a certified coach, and she had made some training series, but they are unfortunately not available anymore. We have to talk about it, how we do this in the future. And yeah, talking about the future plans, we plan to offer coaching again in Rotterdam, have another online coaching session next or this year, writing newsletter articles, probably more podcasts in other languages as well. And we will have some collaboration with the education training section. Yeah. And so on. So that was what I wanted to tell you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Almut. I will not spend too much time on the rest of the projects. I think I've shared in the link. We have a really nice web page that sort of summarizes some of the key projects or all the projects that we are involved in. You would see that at the top is what Alan mentioned. Let me just share my screen here so that everybody knows what I'm talking about. There you go. Are you able to see? You should be able to see the projects here. So the first one is the guidelines that Alan spoke about. Webinars is something that we work on a lot because, you know, professional development. We collaborate with new professionals special interest group. We used to collaborate with ALA, American Library Association, and we will have a webinar coming up, I believe, in March. But I think the real
Edward,
value add. Yep.
Yeah, we've still got the coaching on the screen.
Oh, let me try to figure this out. Let me share the right thing here.
Yeah, it's tricky.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So webinars.
Yes.
Yeah. The really valuable part is going into our archives. What webinars we've done in the past and being able to watch the recording. I think the value add is there. You might not be able to join us because you're from a different part of the world with a different time zone. But our webinars are usually recorded, and you should be able to view past webinars as well. You know, we've been doing webinars for a long time, even before the pandemic. Coaching initiative, I think Almut mentioned a little bit. That's also a key project that our section organizes. Another one is the Knowledge Cafe. I don't know whether we have anyone who is part of the Knowledge Cafe team that's on right now. I see Tina, right, raising her hand there, if I did miss her. So if you're in the group,
Daria is with us, so she is.
right.
Yeah.
So if you have a time, we can always share a little bit about the Knowledge Cafe. I think it's kind of fun. I've been involved in at least one myself at one of the WRIC. And then I wanted to highlight some of the other things that we are doing. Infodemic is a really good example of one of our standing committee members, one of our advisory group members, being interested in this topic that sort of came out because of the pandemic, right? This idea of information overload. So they did a webinar. That was the last webinar we had a couple of months ago. You should be able to watch the recording in our webinars page. And we have little other kind of fun projects as well, like the Global Community Kitchen, where we encourage anyone to share recipes that they have from their part of the world. This was really valuable during many of us were encountering sort of shelter at home, or we were quarantined. So it was a nice way to kind of share what we were having at home. So you see it's kind of populated with different parts and things like that. So I'm going to pause here to see whether any of our section members have anything to add. I don't want to put anyone on the spot here, but I also see Buffy from the IT section here. I think I just saw the email coming in this morning from Alan that they're looking to collaborate with us for upcoming satellite meeting, I believe, or was it a yeah?
That's correct. That's
so
correct.
so I think we have time to discuss that in the breakout rooms. I'm going to try to keep the breakout rooms small. There's about 13 of us here. So maybe we can break it out in about, I don't know, 4 rooms or 3 each, right? And then we can introduce ourselves. I'm gonna put what I had in mind in the chat. Very simple, what who you represent. For those of us who are interested, like what are you interested about in our section? And then we can come back again after maybe 5 to 10 minutes. I think that should be a good time to share in the small groups. So I'll put you in groups first, and then I'll do the announcements so that you know what to talk about here. Just give me a moment here. Let me stop the recording because we